That right here, that is me. 93 days into my trip to the Sahara Desert from Germany on my Honda CRF250L. I have a puncture in the middle of nowhere and no way to fix it since my tools got stolen in Spain a few weeks prior. And while I'm thinking about how the hell I'm gonna get myself out of this situation, this guy suddenly appears. His name is Mustafa. We don't speak the same language. My Arabic starts with yalla yalla and it ends with habibi, but he immediately understands the problem and gets to work with his own tools. As we realize that someone also stole my air compressor in Spain, he indicates that he could take my rear tire with him to his house and fill it up there. And honestly, at that point I have no other option and he seems friendly, so I agree. So for the next 10 minutes, I hold my bike on the side stand with just one wheel remaining, standing there like an idiot in the 40 degrees Celsius heat in Northern Africa. After a while he comes back, even with my tire, which is a welcome surprise, which I wasn't entirely sure about. As he installs the tire, this dude shows up, helps a bit, and then quickly disappears again. That's Morocco for you. I have no other explanation. Mustafa then notices that my chain could use some oil, and at that point I wonder what sort of wizard this dude is and why he even knows all of this stuff and why he has his own tools with him. That's so random. And after he's done with the job, he shows me that he's actually a motorcycle mechanic, and I can't believe my luck. What are the chances? I offer him money for his help, but he refuses, and all he wants for payment is that I add him on Facebook and that I have a wonderful time in his country. What a legend. That lovely experience was part of my gigantic trip from Germany to Africa and back on my Honda CRF250L in the middle of winter 2023. The whole trip took about 4 months and I effectively lived on that bike for that time. I rode through freezing temperatures on icy roads in France, along the magical Spanish coast and finally into Morocco over the Atlas mountain range into the Sahara Desert. And there in the middle of nowhere between the dunes, I even met a native who wanted to try my ride. His name is Hasan. Barefoot and without a helmet, he mounted my motorcycle. And for a second, I was scared he was gonna steal my bike because that would have left me stranded with no water and no cell phone, as all of that was mounted on the bike. Looking back, it was kinda naive to give him the keys here, but it was all good in the end. He had a great time and gave me back my bike. To be honest, to this day, I still think he was probably just scared of the machine. The beast, as I call it, has a whooping 25 horsepower and a 7-liter fuel tank. And that means I have to refuel every 150 kilometers. And also riding it, from the outside it looks like I'm a gorilla sitting on a grindstone on that thing. The next few weeks, me and the beast explored the desert before finally heading back to Germany through Portugal, Spain and France. What you don't know is that during all this time I had a brand new Tenere 700 sitting at home in my garage. I bought that bike specifically for this Africa trip just a few months prior, but after a few test rides I decided to leave the Tenere at home and go with the CRF. So there I was then, back in Germany in 2023 after my Africa trip, and with a head full of memories and a super messy 250L and a clean Tenere 700 in my garage, and I wanted to sell one bike and keep the other. In the end, I decided to sell the Tenere. Like I said, I've owned a Tenere 700 and sold it. I also owned a Royal Enfield Himalayan for several years and sold it. And I even tried to love mid-sized BMW GS's, as many of my German friends encouraged me to give German engineering a shot, but it just wasn't for me. I love my Japanese beast for several reasons over any other motorcycle. The main benefit of the 250 over a bike like the Tenere is the weight difference. The 250L weighs just around 140 kilos, which is roughly 60 kilograms lighter than a Tenere or a Himalayan, or 80 to 90 kilograms lighter than an 850 GS. And when you go on these big adventure trips, you carry so much luggage that even a somewhat light Tenere is gonna end up weighing around 240 kilograms with the luggage. On my adventure trips with the Tenere and the BMW, I therefore realized relatively quickly that I don't really enjoy wrestling those heavy machines on the trails. They feel sluggish, they are insanely difficult to pick up when you drop them, and overall I felt much more insecure on them. That said, I'm just an average rider who crashes pretty often, so if you have better skills than me, then I fully understand why your enjoyment of a Tenere is also much higher than mine. Since I travel most of my time solo, it was vital for me to have a bike that I can pick up no matter where I end up and no matter how exhausted I am. And truth be told, in the desert I was exhausted many times. Driving in the sand, getting stuck, all of that in motorcycle gear and no shade inside. The 250L is also incredibly easy to work on. Making oil changes takes around 10 minutes, I can easily jack up the bike and change a tire myself if Mustafa isn't around. The bike is reliable and it did not have a single hiccup in 25,000 kilometers. The service intervals are also huge. You can easily do these big trips and just worry about the maintenance when you get home. Honestly, there are many bad things about this bike. The 250L is not a road bike, even though it's legally allowed to be on the road. This is an off-road bike that some engineer, for some reason, put indicators, a headlight and a license plate on. Nothing about this bike is comfortable on the road. The seat feels like you're sitting on a skateboard. So that means the most annoying part of any trip with the 250L ends up being actually getting to the trails. I live in Central Europe and we have no off-road riding opportunities for hundreds of kilometers, unless you want to get in trouble with the law. There are just too many people living around here. So for any off-road adventure, I have to plan at least one day of Autobahn to get there and one day to get back home. And Autobahn with that motorcycle feels like running a marathon in flip-flops. Overtaking is also very risky. You're just too slow to quickly pass someone safely, and that's especially true with long vehicles like trucks. Let me just clarify this though, you're never an actual hindrance to traffic. It's never dangerous to just ride this bike. You can keep up with the normal cars with average traffic. And once you get to the small roads or the off-road sections, then you're golden anyway. But getting there is painful. No other bike has brought me so close to just straight up buying a transport truck, and that suddenly makes it far more expensive than almost any big adventure bike. And in my mind, that's actually what makes big adventure bikes so attractive to a lot of people. Realistically, most of us don't live near the trails. Most of us need to schedule a weekend in the mountains to find adventure, and for that you first need to get to the mountains. And in that sense, I fully understand anyone who trades a bit of off-road capability and weight for comfort. The whole adventure segment is just a huge compromise in either direction, and you have to decide which part of the spectrum you want to focus on. And while the weight of the 250L is low compared to big adventure bikes, it's nowhere near competitive when you compare it to actual off-road machines. Compared to them, it has no power and is still relatively heavy. The suspension is also absolute dog shit and designed for featherweights, and anyone who wants to take this bike seriously needs to invest in a proper kit. And then there are these reports of the subframe breaking under heavy load. It's not just all positive when it comes to this bike. Generally on the 250L you feel like a snail going forward on the back of a turtle crawling backwards. It's about cruising and exploring, nothing more but also nothing less. And all of that in an imperfected package that could have been so much more than it ended up being. I think what sets this bike apart is that it went into the opposite direction the industry is heading to. In a time where adventure bikes cost more than some cars and need electronic rider modes to actually be able to put their insane power down on the dirt, it is refreshing to have a motorcycle that focuses on what actually matters at a price point most people can afford. The 250L isn't being sold anymore, but instead it got replaced by the 300L, which offers a bit more power, albeit not much. Overall though, I think the most important part of any adventure bike is that it gives you that adventure you're seeking. The beast gives me the confidence to ride the worst roads, to do the sketchiest shit, and know that I'll come out healthy on the other side with a big fat grin on my face, and that feeling alone is priceless. That feeling also means, for me at least, this is the best adventure bike ever made.